Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Monday night, and you know what that means. We're back here for another episode of the Monday Night Review Club. As you know, our good buddy Rob Motto is on route back to the East Coast, so he's out for this episode. But as you can see here, we wasted no time replacing him on the show because we got two great film review buddies here joining us here tonight. We got the great Christian Toto joining us here all the way from Colorado. How you doing today, Chris?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you back. And then, of course, our good buddy Mexican Ironman is back once again to talk about some superhero movies with us. How you doing today, Mex?
Very well, sir. Thanks for having me. I had a blast last time I was here, and can't wait to talk about the Flash.
Well, if you had a blast last time, you're definitely not gonna have a blast this time around because the movies we're talking about this week is pretty rough. This is we've been dreading this week for quite a while. There was like 5 releases that came out this weekend, and I think they were all pretty mediocre to bad. Some worse than others. I guess you have to figure out later on the show which ones we hit it the most. But we got 3 movies on tap here for tonight. We have The Flash, The Blackening, and Extraction 2. And just to let you guys know, for the first time ever, we are streaming here on Kick. Yes, Cassie has finally bullied us into streaming on Kick, so we're on Kick right now. Hopefully, we'll get a better turnout here than we got on Twitch, but it'll take a little while to get back to us. But we're also here on YouTube and on Rumble as well. So before we get started here, I know Spencer is going hot in the chat right now, saying The Flash more like the ass. We'll talk about that one just here in a second. And our good buddy Dova Fett's also joining us here as well. I know Cassie is on the Kick side of things, and I'm also paying attention to Rumble too. So we're building a little bit of an atmosphere around here. We're almost at 1,000 here on YouTube, so slowly but surely we're making our way up. But I guess we should go ahead and just start off hot because we got a lot of this debate to talk about here tonight. So I want to go ahead and hop right into the big movie that came out this weekend, which is The Flash, a movie that I believe only the 4 of us saw looking at the box office numbers. Yeah.
Wait, they them saw it, so that's more than. Wait, no, it's 5. Sorry.
Yeah. And you have to count the other personalities that are in his head too, so it's probably more than 5. But yeah, The Flash came out. Look, this has been kind of a dumpster fire for a while. Let's just rewind here for a second. Ezra Miller has been a complete dumpster fire of a human being for quite some time. Even the last year, I think his problems became more and more public. Yeah, instances of him choking women out in foreign countries. Then he went to Hawaii. He was terrorizing a couple. I think he threw a chair at one woman's head. Then the next thing you know, there was rumors about him grooming teenage kids into a cult up in Vermont. Then he was threatening law enforcement officers with a bulletproof vest like he was 50 Cent in 2003. So there was a lot of questionable things that happened throughout the course of the year. Now, Warner Brothers, because for whatever reason, they decided that they were going to put a $300 million Warner Brothers movie with Ezra Miller as the lead. So I guess they put him in a cave for like the last year, didn't talk to anyone, didn't get in any trouble. And then it was like, hey, look, we have to release this movie. So I got an idea. Let's just focus all the marketing on Michael Keaton's return as Batman and make everyone think that this is not an Ezra Miller movie when it clearly is. Now, whether that gamble actually paid off or not, you can talk about in the box office numbers. I think they're talking about this film might end up losing anywhere of like $300 million at this current point, which you have to wonder if you had $300 million in production, you're probably just better off canceling this movie and dying in a wash anyway, rather than putting even more money behind the marketing of this film. But well, before we get into actually the nitty gritty of this film itself, I want to start with you, Christian. What was kind of your general thoughts on the Ezra Miller situation going into this film, and did it affect your viewing of the movie before you saw this one?
I've gotten so numb to the misbehavior of Hollywood. I really do set that aside when I watch a movie. And I mean, it can't help but creep in now and then, no pun intended. But, the fact that Morgan Wallen had his career taken from him for using the N-word and not against a person of color. And yeah. Roseanne Barr has basically been stripped of her entire blue-collar sitcom legacy because of one awful, gross racial tweet. And yet what Miller's been doing for months and months, and nothing really of consequence happens to him. The people behind the scenes of The Flash would love to make Flash 2 with Miller. It's just amazing. It just shows you this cancel culture is nonsense. It's about power. And if Ezra Miller wasn't non-binary, if he was just a straight white male, he would be toast. But not the case.
Another thing, it's like to me listening to like, because we've been covering like his legal drama for like the last year on the Barroom podcast, and it feels like to me that I'm not even sure if he truly is like a they them or anything like that, because he kind of gives off the vibes of someone who would use that to his advantage to cover up all his other crimes that are going on behind the scenes, which in a lot of ways he's kind of like a real life supervillain at this point, which kind of seems like it'll be more interesting than the movie that we saw here. Mex, what did you think about this whole thing?
Well, let's also remember the report of when they showed up at his place, wherever it was, and there was the baby that was playing with a bullet and teething with it. Let's not forget that incident. I'm 100% on board with everything Christian said, and I think what moved the needle for me, besides the fact that I'm Midnight's Edge After Dark guy, and we review movies, is that when I saw the trailer and I saw the barking, I actually thought there was going to be a little bit more Keaton, a little bit more Batman type of thing. And so I was kind of intrigued. But man, I got to tell you, it was a long 2 hours and 25 minutes. And that opening scene with the babies in the air and the baby microwave, I got to tell you, as a father, as a moviegoer, as a dad, and as a human being, I don't know who made that decision for that opening baby rainfall microwave. And let's think about it, the one baby that almost got forgotten about when that scene ended. I'm assuming spoilers are okay since no one's seen the movie, right?
Oh yeah, it's okay. Fine.
You know, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot I had a baby in the microwave, I got to save him too, or her, or it, or whatever it was. And it was just offensive. I mean, I was ready to walk out, but I was already sitting there, and I was about halfway through some delicious popcorn. And so, you know, I stayed.
I've got a pretty thick skin, and I don't mind outrageous jokes, but that segment went on and on and on.
Christian, didn't it feel like it just wouldn't end?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the joke expired long before the actual segment expired, and the action was terrible. You know, we just saw was it the Quicksilver character where they used speed in a really fascinating way. And they tried to replicate that, but they didn't get anywhere near it. His whole superpower is he runs in this awkward, weird fashion that is not interesting. It's not heroic. It's odd looking. It doesn't convey power and strength and vitality. And that's the hook here. Oh, let's go watch the Flash with his superpowers running in slow motion, and it looks weird. I mean,
look, someone in Hollywood has to be cooking the books here, because when I think about a $300 million production budget, I think to myself, how is the visual effects that bad? And you had $300 million to work with. Like,
would you hear the spin on that? They're saying, oh, it was bad on purpose now.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, it could be north of 300. I mean, Chris made a great point. They should have canceled the movie and taken the tax deduction, but there's arguably, what we've heard in Midnight's Edge circles, the Tom Connors, is that there may have been some contracts attached to this, so that if it wasn't released, there had to be some additional payouts. So they sort of gambled between, okay, let's release it and let's see how it does. But at $300 million production, you add the marketing on top of that, which could be another 70 to 130 million-ish, give or take. And, you know, given the fact that they're only going to get back anywhere from 45 to 60% of the box office in terms of the gross receipts, what's coming back to the studio, depending on the deal they make on which distributor, foreign or domestic, this thing could lose more than 300, because that means that their harvest has to be in the 700, 800, 900 gross in order to bring back about half of that. And this thing could lose well more than $300 million. And that's pretty devastating. And as a DC fan, I'm a DC guy more than a Marvel guy. I grew up reading DC comics. I'm Green Lantern. I'm Batman. I'm honestly, Flash is so far down on my list of superheroes in DC. I can't argue with people that say, well, if you're a hardcore Flash fan, you would have really liked this movie. Well, I'm not. I mean, running fast, I'm kind of like with Chris. You know, if running fast is going to be your superpower, it better be pretty amazing. And I didn't see anything amazing.
I personally would prefer that they cook the books than cook the babies. I would just say that we all need to apologize to Clint Eastwood for trying to pass off that plastic baby in American Sniper after seeing the babies in this movie. They look even for her.
They look demonic, didn't they?
So
they look like somebody put somebody put baby in like some kind of like AI video thing, and then that's what we ended up getting.
Rick, didn't they look like Children of the Corn kind of or something?
Yeah, they look freakish. They did not look like real babies. They look like rubber babies, and it's sad that they spent apparently so much money. And that story about how this was, his point of view. This was what he would see. I'm like, no, it doesn't even matter if that's how he sees the world, because we're supposed to see it, not. It's irrelevant how he sees it, but that was pretty bad. The thing with the microwave, I didn't understand that at all. And what was that dog doing there? That was it, service dog just floating about. Ugh.
In the baby ward, Rick.
In the baby, yeah, I guess
So so this is a big problem with kind of like the basic setup of this Solo movie is that when we talk about the characters like Quicksilver and Marvel, like when Fox had control of that character, we've seen what they've done with Quicksilver and kind of the speedster superhero so much better. This is almost what 3 times they did it in their movies here. So now we're finally getting a DC Flash movie where it's like, okay, all the really cool stuff, like other studios have already done it with the whole speedster kind of slowing down of time and stuff like that. So what really could you do? And it felt like this is the big sequence that you guys came up with here at the very beginning, like this whole thing where like the building's falling down and there's explosions and like, oh, the babies are falling out of the sky. Let me go throw one in a microwave and line them all up like it's a buffet or something like that, just to bring them back down to earth. And this is our hero. I mean, I don't know what exactly they were thinking here, but we can talk about a lot of bad decisions creatively as we go on.
Yeah, I mean, just remember, this is the opening sequence. This is what is supposed to, begin this big epic spectacle, and you've got something that is pointless. It doesn't add anything to the overall story that there is. Creepy with the babies and the microwave thing. A really bizarre sequence, and like that whole thing with him at the cafe trying to get his order. Like, did he have ADHD? That's what I kept wondering throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, and then he goes from, I guess, what is that, Central City to Gotham. I was like, why? I didn't understand any of it.
So here's the other problem. So over the last few months, obviously now Warner Brothers has given the keys to the entire universe to James Gunn. So James Gunn is essentially doing his own thing, and in the process of doing that, everything that came beforehand in the Snyder era has to be wiped out. So one of the big problems going into this movie is that you pretty much told the audience before they've even shown up that, hey, this movie really doesn't matter because none of these people are coming back. So you bring in Ben Affleck as Batman, you bring in Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, you have them make cameos in the movie, but this is probably the last time we're going to see all of these characters playing these roles. So I don't know. For me, it's very hard to get people into the theater when you've already told them that, yeah, this stuff really doesn't matter. Plus, you probably don't like the lead actor anyway. So who did you really think was going to go see this? Christian, what's kind of your thoughts on kind of the transition from Zack Snyder to James Gunn, and basically this being probably the last piece of the Gunn universe, not the Gunn universe, the Snyder universe that we're going to see here?
It's whiplash. I mean, watching Ben Affleck yuck it up with The Flash when just moments ago he was in this dark, brooding Snyder movie. It's all over the map. It doesn't help the mood of the scene. And as disappointing as the MCU has become and as far as they've fallen collectively, there is a bit of connective tissue there. It doesn't feel like they're changing gears so dramatically, but that's exactly what you see with these movies. And tonally, it's all over the map. I can't imagine. I imagine Ben Affleck just going back to his trailer, counting the cash. Okay, I'm back on the set. And by the way, I will get to him in a moment, but Michael Shannon is a wonderful actor. I don't agree with anything he says politically, but he's a terrific talent. And he was terrible in this movie. And he later admitted he was bored to tears, essentially. He couldn't even hide it. While he was doing promotions for other movies, talking about how much of The Flash was a bore to him. And you could see it on screen. My gosh. And quick aside, I feel like all these actors, I think deep down they've been selling their soul to be in these MCU, DC movies, and they're sick of it. They're not even good anymore. So now they can just talk against it, like Elizabeth Olsen and Michael Shannon and some others as well.
Yeah, everyone's pretty much phoning it in at this point. It's showing big time with these movies. I guess we'll save that for the end, because there's a big thing with like the Gal Gadot and Henry Cavill that I want to get into, but I think we'll save that just for a little bit here. So the big emphasis of this movie, or kind of the entire plot here, is that despite everything that's going on with Ezra Miller in real life, the film wants you to focus on the Barry Allen character, because the only reason that this movie can work is that you're supposed to sympathize and kind of like emotionally grapple with his character throughout the entire movie. So the story was that, when he was young, his mother died. It was killed by someone who, we still don't know the identity of until they announced it like after the fact. They have to find out after a 2.5 hour movie, you reveal who actually killed his mother. It's like, great job there, guys. Then you turn around, and then all of a sudden here we have his dad is being booked for the murder of his mother. So he's like, well, hey, I'm having a very, very bad day. I'm just going to go speed around the city. And then he finds out, oh, I have the ability to stop time. I have the ability to go back and fix time itself. So it's like, well, I just go back in time and stop my mother from dying. Well, Batman, Ben Affleck, tells him that, yeah, that's not a good idea. You start messing with time, you're going to blow apart of things that are happening in the past. Not a good idea. So he's like, oh, well, how can I prevent my mother's death without actually affecting the events of the past? It's like, oh, well, if I go back to the store and give her like a tomato can, then my dad will never have to leave, and then somehow maybe she doesn't die, which I guess works in this little universe here. But as we find out here, there was actually consequences of doing that, because now you changed both the past and the future, not just the one timeline. Now let me ask you guys this whole thing with the multiverse, we haven't even gotten that far into it over the last couple of years. This is only something that we've really been seeing like post Endgame. So we're only about 3 years into this whole multiverse saga. I'm already tired of it. I'm already tired from the Marvel cinematic universe. I'm already tired from it, from the DC universe. This whole idea of, look, the reason why they're doing this is because, hey, look, if we just create a multiverse, we don't have to follow any kind of canon. We can just be like, oh yeah, no, there's totally a Indian Spider-Man and a black punk rock Spider-Man, and it all makes sense because it's multiverse. And now the Flash is doing it with this whole multiverse thing. Mike, are we tapped out in the multiverse at this point already?
I really think we are, and I think what we've seen now is this. We've already had this trend in Hollywood where they're not willing to commit to telling a story that entertains us. And when you slap into this multiverse and you play with time travel, it's an easy excuse to try to get a budget, to get paid, and hopefully you're going to tell a story that sells some tickets and makes some money, and kind of inoculates. It's almost like taking a drug. It's almost like doing a double shot of espresso in the morning, and you're going to give people, oh, what if this, what if that, what if this, and it's indicative of a bigger disease. I think this use of the multiverse is a symptom of a much larger disease in Hollywood in storytelling, which is that we don't have creators, we don't have writers, we don't have directors who are playing to win. Instead, they're trying to play not to lose. And whether it's baseball, football, or Hollywood, when you have people that are playing not to lose, guess what? All the fans lose, because the only way to win is to tell a compelling story. When George Lucas or, any great creator that gave us something that we once loved, went out there, they were playing to win. They were shooting for the rafters. They were trying to get that baseball to go out of the park. And in Hollywood, they're trying to they weren't trying to play it safe. They're trying to be bold. They're trying to be creative, and they really cared about the story that the fans were going to see and that they were going to grasp onto. This all multiverse stuff, I agree with you. We're tapped out, and it's indicative of them trying to go backwards and not forwards with a compelling story.
Yep. Rick, what do you think about this whole thing?
Sorry. When I was writing my review that's going to publish in a couple of days about The Flash, I went over like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, No Way Home, Across the Spider-Verse, which is the Citizen Kane of this generation. We also have last year's Best Picture winner, which was about the multiverse. Everything Everywhere All at Once. It was about a multiverse. I think people are just exhausted with multiverses. It's an easy way to kind of just write various stories and not have to stick to canon, which is ironic because this movie and what Across the Spider-Verse are both about canon events, which apparently can be changed. Yeah, people aren't. That's one of the problems that this movie had. It's that it's more multiverse. So and that even leads to a situation that we'll talk about later, where we have all of these long praised cameos, which I don't think make any sense. But again, we'll talk about all that much later because I really want to talk
Yeah,
about those.
there's probably more sinister things about that whole cameo that we'll talk about later on too. But yeah, it's like we always have this debate all the time. And Christian, I'm pretty sure you heard it too. This whole thing about, oh, is superhero fatigue finally setting in? And it's like, I think we've gotten to the point where, look, the big blow off was like Endgame, right? And I always look at Endgame kind of like the third act of the movie. It's like, okay, that was that, everything built up to this, and now it's over, and now the movie's done. We can all go home. But now it's like, oh no, here's the next hour and 90 minutes of the film after we've already given you the big ending, and the audience just sitting there like, why is this still going on? It's like you're, especially on the Marvel side, it's like you're building your whole future on this whole multiverse. We're gonna bring in every Marvel actor who's ever played any Marvel character ever, and the audience is 5 years out from your next big movie. You're just going, dude, we're done with this. Like, please stop.
It's amazing, and it's funny that we burned out in the multiverse concept so quickly. I think part of the problem, I'll blame Spider-Man No Way Home, which I thought was really good and enjoyable and did it as well as you could expect. Oh, some anger
Whoa.
there. Anyway, but I thought because it was handled as well as it could be handled in that film, the floodgates were open. It was so successful. The cameos were endearing and fun. And I think, oh, we can just do it. We can just do it again. Because remember the actor from 12 years ago? We can just bring him back. And she was great. I mean, it's such a gimmick. It's such a crutch, a storytelling crutch. And it all collapses.
So, Chris, what you're saying is that because that box office was so big and they're so successful, they're from that point on, they're like, okay, we've got to go take our stab at that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it was a commercial success, a critical success. I think fans genuinely liked it. It came at a really odd time where we're coming back to the theaters. I mean, it just hit the spot, and but it's so lazy. I mean, just bringing back extra people, and I mean, at least they wove Michael Keaton in a certain way, but even his arc is ridiculous. He's this grizzled old guy with long hair. He's a hermit, and the next scene he's reporting for duty, sir. I mean, it was just absurd,
It was the whole argument, the way that he's introduced. It's like, the two Barrys are looking for their version of Batman, who they think is going to be Ben Affleck, but it's actually Michael Keaton. And he's kind of, like I said, this old man hermit. He got like this super long hair. And the idea here is that he's no longer Batman because, Gotham is as safe as it's ever been, so they don't need Batman anymore. And even though he still has like all of his gadgets in the cave, like everything, still completely running, like he was just there like yesterday. But he's retired because Gotham's just super safe now. It's like,
well, they defunded the police and everything was beautiful after that. So,
well, there you go. We got all the social workers out there handling Clayface and all the other rogue galleries. So yeah, we don't need those guys anymore.
Sorry, Batman.
Yeah. And so you have like I said, this whole movie was marketed on, oh my God, it's Michael Keaton. We get to see him as Batman for the first time in 30 years. So that was what Warner Brothers hoped everyone was going to go see. But even though it felt like watching Michael Keaton in this movie, it's like they were so driven that this whole thing is going to be nostalgia based. And even a couple of scenes where it's like he's standing in like the Bat Cave, then like the camera zooms in, and he gives like this really like corny one liner, and they did like at least 3 times like in this movie, to the point where it's like, okay guys, come on, really, like are we doing this? But did Michael Keaton in any kind of way save this film for you? Start with Chris.
I love seeing him. He's a great actor. There are a few moments that I enjoyed, but I thought it was so poorly handled. Like I said, he went from the old man to he's back to his fighting self. It didn't make much sense. The Easter eggs are so clunky. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. I mean, my God, what a cringe moment. If you can't make it feel organic, then please don't do it. And even if they had made him stumble a few times, like he's out of shape, he's out of practice, it was just absurd. What he, I don't know. The whole movie falls apart at the end. It's great. Michael Keaton's a big star. He's really talented. It's good to see him as Batman. But if you're going to misuse him, if you're going to just slap him into a movie and hope that his name recognition carries the day, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. What about you, Mike? What'd you think about it?
Now, I thought I kind of bought into the argument that the Michael Keaton fandom would show up and prop up this opening weekend. I'm not necessarily the biggest Michael Keaton fan. I'm more of a Christian Bale kind of guy. Maybe then after that, Ben Affleck. It's, it's weird for me. But I mean, I love Michael Keaton. I think he did a great job. But two things. One, I was surprised that there wasn't this overwhelming people like for example, with the Spider-Man, there's the Toby folks, right? And they have their definitive position on the other two Spider-Man that came since. I mean, so we know and the Toby people are, they're Toby people.
Yeah.
I thought there would be a lot of Keaton folks show up for this box office. It didn't happen. And second of all, the whole showing up and he's a human or hermit, it made no sense to me. I'm like, look, if Batman could retire and I got that kind of money, when you roll up on my house, I got pool party, I got DJ, I got smoking hot chicks everywhere. I'm having fun. My nails are groomed. I'm chiseled because I got all day. I don't have to. I'm sleeping at night.
It's almost as if they forget that this guy is still Bruce Wayne. Like he still has kind of like Bruce a life Wayne, outside of Batman.
I mean, this guy right here that they showed up on, it's like I almost want to like check his A1C level and count his Jenny Craig points. I'm like, this guy.
Yep. It is funny to me how like kind of the concept of this film here was very similar to Batman Beyond, but for whatever reason, Warner Brothers refused to do any kind of like Batman Beyond like movie or a show in modern day. So I mean, if it was like a Batman Beyond thing, it'd probably work a lot better than just shoehorning in two Ezra Millers and then later on you get Kal-El, who is the Supergirl variant, because we have to. Just in case you guys don't realize, when Flash goes back in time and screws everything up, he also screws up the entire lineup of the Justice League. So Cyborg and Aquaman are no longer there. Nobody knows where Wonder Woman is. There's a different Batman. And then also Superman died when he was a baby. So he never actually made it to Earth. He died. And then we end up getting Supergirl, which is kind of the quote unquote surprise twist. Now, I do feel like with a lot of these, like the whole thing with like Michael Keaton, even with Supergirl to an extent, that if Ezra Miller hadn't been losing his mind over the last year or so, that these things probably would have been played up more as like a surprise, like a genuine surprise, rather than, well, because we can't really market this with our actual lead actor, then we have to pretty much give away all our surprises in this film because there's no other way to market it outside of that. Do you think that hurt the film in the long run, Christian?
I don't know. I've been trying to figure out why it did so poorly. I think it's a perfect storm of we're exhausted by the multiverse. We're uneasy watching Ezra Miller on screen. The Flash is not a top tier character. I also think maybe one of the things is this was overhyped, and this was the greatest action superhero movie of all time. They kind of made Tom Cruise's pronouncement out like it was on from on high. I think when people sense that there's an inauthentic hype machine going on, then maybe they stay away as well. I mean, I think it's James Gunn's in the DC EU now, and now we're going to change gears again. It's going to be a whole different thing. Why do we even care about this? I mean, I think there's a lot of things going on here, but I don't think it's just one factor. I think it's multiple factors.
Yeah, and another thing, I know Rick always makes the joke about something being like the new Citizen Kane, but the weeks leading up to this, it was literally all these people, James Gunn, Tom Cruise, David Zaslav, were all saying, oh, this is the greatest superhero movie I've ever seen in my life. Now looking back at it, it was more like, okay, they were probably just telling you this because they knew they had so much money riding on this. They need to have that hype there, even though it just wasn't there. Like over the course of the last few weeks, they said that, oh, we're gonna have a domestic opening of like 140 million. That dropped to about 70 within just like that, right? The next thing you know, it's like maybe it'd be about 60 to 70, and then it actually finished at like 55. So it actually got worse as the closer we got to this movie, which is I don't even know how you pull that off with a major superhero film like this.
Well, The Kiss of Death is the cinema score. It was a B. Most of these superhero films are front loaded with the fans are there. They're going to give us an A, an A plus, maybe even an A minus. This coming out with a B, it's not going to have legs at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, this is not a major character. Ezra Miller's not a major star. We haven't really kept up with the DCEU because it's been kind of convoluted with various versions.
Yeah.
And so what interest is there? And for me, I'll just say that Michael Keaton was probably the best part of this movie. And that's, I don't know if that's damning with faint praise, but some of those lines like that, we want to get nuts, let's get nuts. He says it with such almost like a resignation, like, oh, yeah, I got to say this because it's expected of me. There's no real enthusiasm. Yeah. So it's kind of sad. And yeah, when we get what's her Zara L Zara
Yeah.
Supergirl. Uh, she looked so unhappy. I mean, both the character and the actress. I mean, there was, she looked like she was just there and like, oh, please let me just get through this.
Well, let me ask you guys about her. Sasha Callie, who plays Carl, who's Supergirl in this film. It feels like that they were basically trying to do. I mean, they literally tried to recreate Man of Steel at a certain point in this movie by bringing back Zod, and I guess they instructed her to play Supergirl in this movie. It's like go back and watch Man of Steel and try to emulate Henry Cavill as Superman in that film. So she was very stoic and emotionless, which she was in the film. She did kind of like loosen up like a little bit, but it's like she was just kind of like stone faced throughout the most of the film. And I had to believe that was like the direction. Like I haven't seen too much of her, but I don't think she's that bad of an actress. But Mike, what do you think about Sasha playing the role of Supergirl here in the film?
Well, it's sad to say, but it was refreshing to see how one of these battles would have played out, because if there's two Kryptonians, and one of them's a bad guy at 230 pounds, and the other is a girl at Kryptonian 90 to 110, yeah, she's gonna die 15 different ways from Alabama. Okay, she's gonna die 15 different ways, and I can see why Michael, the actor, was bored, because I mean, what were his scenes? Okay, I stab her in the chest this scene, I stab her in the back that scene, I stab her from the side that scene, and then I go on top and I stab her from on top. I mean, those are his 4 shots.
It's 1,000 ways to die.
And looking at a tank.
Yeah, he had great motivation.
I can't really say what did I think about her, because there wasn't enough for her to think about.
You know what I really miss? I mean, I miss a lot about the old Superman 1 and 2 with Christopher Reeve, but he was sweet, he was happy, he was upbeat. There was something about him that was joyous. I mean, he was bemused. He was foolish as Clark Kent. I just missed that aw shucksness of it. And this new Supergirl is just, like you said, dour and sullen. And even Henry Cavill didn't have a lot of joy to his performance. I thought, he's a big dude, he's a good-looking guy, he looks the part, but they kind of kept him repressed, and he didn't have that twinkle that Christopher Reeve had.
Right, and Chris, the other thing too is they keep putting themselves in these boxes that they don't go out of, because so the vibe that I got with her is like, okay, why should I save these humans when they've kept me locked up for all my life? Yeah. Well, if you didn't have to create a trope where she's locked up, and then she wouldn't, then you don't have to deal with that arc where all of a sudden a light flips off because she feels like pity, but it's a reluctant fight. And that's the thing with Superman, with Christopher Reeves, Chris, what you're hitting on is that hopeful zeal, enthusiasm that we all want for ourselves to be a hero.
We're all too hip for the room. We can't make an upbeat Boy Scout Superman. That doesn't. They don't think that'll fly. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe I'm being immature about that. I'd like to see them give it a try.
Chris, I think that's what our society, I think that's what our culture, I think that's what our country needs. We need some damn optimism. We need we don't need reluctant heroes. We don't need tortured heroes. We don't need old hermit living up on the hill, not shy. I mean, Michael Keaton looked like he hadn't showered in months.
He was going all Howard Hughes on us.
Yep.
Well, what I would say is that the thing with Christopher Reeve, what makes him to me the definitive Superman, is that he was playing 2 characters and he played them equally well, Clark Kent and the Man of Steel. With Henry Cavill, yes, I've always said he's a beautiful looking man, but I don't think he can act in general, but he was just very stern and serious. There was no sense of joy. Going back with Supergirl, you look at the 2 versions of Supergirl that we've had. The movie, which is kind of a weird camp movie that I kind of enjoy, and the TV show. There, she had a personality. There, she had moments of fun and amusement and also lightness and innocence. Here, she had nothing, but she's only playing one character. In Supergirl, she's also in the TV show and the film. She plays she plays the alter ego, which I think was Linda Lee. At least that's in the movie version. Here, all I kept thinking of, why do these Russians or Soviets keep her prisoner? They could have just exploited her and gone all, what is that, Red Sun, where Superman lands in the Soviet Union. They could have done that. That's where my mind started wandering. It's like, we've got this powerful being from another world. Why are you keeping her prisoner? Let her out and let her conquer the world for you and for Stalin. It made no sense to me. It was a waste.
Because they're the
Another.
bad guys, Rick. That's what bad guys do.
No, well, no. I mean, the Soviets are the good guys. I don't know what you're talking about, Jacob. All I know
Okay,
is
Bernie Sanders.
it just seemed such a waste to keep her there. I'm not blaming the actress herself because there was nothing for her to play. I mean, she was probably just told, "Be serious, be very stern, and
And
that's
be
it."
more stern.
Yeah.
When you think you've been stern enough, be an extra layer of stern. Yeah, I agree. I don't know if this actress is good or bad or indifferent. She wasn't charming to me at all, but maybe in a different scenario, she could be ebullient. If I'm using that word properly.
Yeah. I mean, her only acting role before this was The Young and the Restless. So, I mean,
There you
that's
go.
soap opera to superhero film is one heck of a leap with no other prior experience inside of that. But I think we were mentioning this earlier. So, I'm going to ask you guys this because there's a lot of split decisions about this whole thing. Towards the end, not quite at the final act yet, but towards the end, you get like this big kind of multiverse scene where the Flashes are realizing that them going back is like fracturing the multiverse and whatnot. So you see that the Flash has his own little circle. Then if you move on to the next circle, here's the Superman universe. And that's when we bring back Christopher Reeves and all the other people who played Superman, and then to get the little Nicolas Cage bit, which I mean, whatever. Yeah. And then of course you bring the Wonder Woman universe. So here's the question here. It's like, and it's Hollywood. They don't have any morality or standards. This is going to happen at some point. This whole idea that now that we're advancing AI to our own destruction, we're just going to start bringing back actors from the dead, and we're going to start making movies with dead actors because we can just recreate their voice and recreate their face now. So I mean, why not do it? So what did you think of the whole Christopher Reeves cameo, quote unquote, in the film? And what do you think of this whole use of AI? I mean, do you think it's a downfall of our destruction, or what is kind of your personal views on this whole situation?
Well, I just saw Indiana Jones in the Dial of Destiny,
Yeah.
and the opening 20 minutes or so is a de-aged Harrison Ford. And let me tell you, it's damn near perfect. I mean, it is amazing how well they recreated the 40-something Harrison Ford. So we're knocking on that doorstep. And if I'm an actor and I'm older and I'm looking for some notoriety and a big paycheck, but I don't have the looks that I once did, I sure as hell I'm going to make that deal, and you can just use my older footage and recreate me. I think we're going to see that sooner than later. Is it ethical? I mean, if the actor is alive and he or she can give permission, that's fine. I don't know. It's a good. I'd like to see a journalist check out if Christopher Reeve's family I don't know, his estate. Did they approve of this? How does that work? But yeah, we're right there. I mean, the technology has improved dramatically over the last 5 years. Just circle 5 more years on the calendar and it'll be darn near perfect.
I imagine that they probably did get permission from the estate
I would
because
think so too.
you are using. I mean, I think they did the same with Marlon Brando when they included him in a recut version of Superman 2. My question, and I put this in my review. First, how many people are really going to recognize George Reeves from the TV
Right.
show? And they also
Who's that pudgy guy?
Yeah. And also note that in all these multiverses, all the actors who have played Superman who are still alive, as far as I know, did not pop up. You didn't see Dean Cain, you didn't see Tyler Hoechlin, you didn't see Brandon Routh, as far as I know. You had Helen Slater pop up as Supergirl, and I mean she's very much still alive, but you didn't have the actress from the TV show pop up. You had the Adam West version, and again, I'm thinking Adam West version of Batman was supposed to be very camp. So what's he doing here and not have the Christopher Nolan version, or even the Robert Pattinson version? It was very selective, and I thought very bizarre. As for the various cameos, it's like I can't get excited. I wasn't as horrified with the Christopher Reeve cameo, if you want to call it that, but it didn't inspire any enthusiasm. It didn't inspire any thrill for me to see him there. I would have preferred. It would have been nicer if we had Faye Dunaway from Supergirl as the witch, just kind of come out there and do
Wow.
some action. I weirdly enjoy that movie. It's not good.
Well, I
but
think for me, one of the criticisms is that if you're going to bring other actors back into a story, they need to be relevant. And maybe getting back to what Chris was talking about a half hour ago, I think Chris hit the nail on the head when he said that, the Spider-Man that we saw 2 years ago with the multiverse worked because when guys came back, it mattered. I mean, I remember sitting there, and when he saves, was it Gwen? No,
I think Gwen, or
was it
I
Gwen?
think it was Gwen. Yeah.
Yeah. So when that moment, which ties all the way back to the original storyline, I remember it feeling oomph, and it seemed like when each one of them showed up, and they were part of a story, and they interwove. Well, there was a bit of a interwoven basket of storytelling, and it made sense. With these ones, it was just like I felt like I was on Jeopardy, and the screens were flipping, and I was
That's
trying to
right.
oh yeah, that's that guy. Oh yeah, that's that guy. I'm like,
Yeah.
why does that guy have a helmet? Oh yeah, that's the Flash from like the
Yeah.
50s. I'm like,
And also, Nicolas Cage never even graced the screen. It
Yeah.
was just a concept. I mean, it's absurd. It's just a gimmicky. It's just Easter egg palooza. You know what? I like Easter eggs when the movie's good and I can enjoy them as an extra layer. When the movie's flat and then all of a sudden they're shoving Easter eggs down my throat, it's annoying. It's insulting, really.
It is very curious that they included some random Flash, but Grant Gustin could not appear. I wonder why he did not appear when most people would sooner identify Grant Gustin as the Flash than Ezra Miller as the Flash.
Rick, that brings up a really damn good question because think about all these people. The one thing I know about CW shows if there is one fandom, there's the Arrow guys and there's the Arrow peeps, but the Flash peeps love that guy. They love that series. And if you're going to release a Flash movie, wouldn't that be a fandom on which to build?
Yeah.
But here's another thing with the whole multiverse. Now, it's weird how they play up both sides with this multiverse because you think when you think of it in this concept, it's like, okay, there's multiple versions of you in different universes all around the world, right? But you would at least think that all the different versions of you at least look like you. But because this is like the superhero universe, they know that we've had multiple actors play multiple characters throughout the course of the year. So instead of having multiple versions of Ezra Miller, it's like, oh, we just got multiple versions of Batman or whatnot. And I was thinking to myself here too, it's like, if you're doing a Flash movie, this could have been the perfect intersect here to have two different versions of Barry Allen, one being Ezra Miller and one actually being the CW actor. If you wanted to bring all of the fan base in for one big Flash movie, since it was going to be a big blow off anyway. So, but for what I hear, apparently they don't like mixing TV actors with movie actors, even though they got Supergirl from The Young and the Restless, which isn't even TV. That's like soap opera. That's like a stage below television in that aspect. But it's like, I don't know. I'm clearly I don't get paid millions of dollars by Warner Brothers to come up with good ideas. I leave that to people who spent $300 million on this.
That might explain why the Supergirl from the TV show was not here, but Helen Slater was. Because I think most people know Supergirl from the TV show than the movie. And
there's no excuse to leave out Brandon Routh.
Well, it's interesting. As far as I know, none of the Superman actors who are still alive and perfectly capable of doing it, even Tom Welling, as far as I know, he didn't pop up, and he technically played like Superman for like a second because he was.
Dean Cain wasn't there, right, Rick?
As far as I know, no. None of these
they're
people.
not bringing Dean Cain in.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. What am I?
Yeah, none of the Supermen popped up. I mean, the only ones that they got are dead, and I don't know why. So all of these people that might get excited, they're probably going to be puzzled as to why George Reeves is in there, and they couldn't even get color footage. They did shoot one season of Superman.
That's a great point. That's a great point. It's wildly distracting to have, there's the black and white hero. Yeah. First of all, they could have colorized it, but you're right. They did shot in color.
They shot one season in color. Yeah. So it's just very strange how they try to include all of these various characters. But then again, I know Jacob doesn't like me mentioning Doctor Who, but I'm used to seeing actors from the past who have played the same character join forces. All right, so this is
Well,
nothing
that's
new.
TV, so I guess I can give it a pass if it's TV.
Okay,
But
yeah, I've seen it done before. I'm not impressed.
so we get to the ending of this film here, and once again we get sort of like this non-traditional superhero ending to a film where the whole thing is we went back in time and Zod's taking over the world again, but there's no Superman in this universe, so Supergirl and the two Flashes with old man Batman have to be the ones to stop him. And no matter what they do over and over again, they just keep dying and dying and dying to the point where they realize, look, there's no way that we're going to win this fight in this universe, right? But the younger Flash is like, no, we can go back and save everyone. So he keeps going back and going back until he realizes that he's essentially become cursed to the multiverse because he keeps trying to go back and fix his mistakes without accepting the fact that they can't be fixed. So this is where the older Barry goes back to the moment where he tried to save his mom in the first place, realizes that, hey, look, there's nothing I can do to save her. So he just finally accepts it, says one last goodbye. And that's kind of like the ending there. So you don't get like this traditional, like, oh, the good guys beat up the bad guys. It's like, no, it's more that the good guys should accept the fact that, hey, they just can't win this battle because it wasn't meant to be. And we move on essentially to the end of the film. So we get the big cameo here. I don't even want to say it's the big cameo, but one of the big cameos here at the very, very end. After Flash believes that he's fixed all the wrongs and he's put everything back in its place, so he goes back to his universe to find Batman, and nope, it's not Ben Affleck, it's George Clooney, and he's like, "Oh God, I still made everything bad." So then there's your ending for the Flash there. So thoughts on the ending and thoughts on, I guess, someone acknowledging that George Clooney was in fact Batman at one point, even though we all try to forget.
It's a good gag. It doesn't make any sense, but nothing made sense about the movie. But I want to mention briefly, there was a post-credit scene, and it was the most meaningless thing I may have ever seen, unless I'm missing something.
Nope.
It was just the Flash and Aquaman is drunk, and they're out in the street, and literally nothing happens. I mean, is that really setting up something substantial? I couldn't believe my eyes.
No, it clearly isn't, Chris. And I got to tell you, as I was so ready to go when the credits started rolling, and I saw everybody sitting there that was in my theater. I'm like, oh crap, they must know there's a post-credit scene.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
I should know this from Midnight's Edge. I'm trying to forget. So I stood up. I just stood by the door and I waited. And I got to tell you, those credits took forever. I mean, forever. And then when I watched it, I was just like, oh, I just slumped out of the door. That is the worst post-credit scene I've ever seen. It was neither informative, it was neither anticipatory about a future movie, and it wasn't funny.
Yeah. You know, a post-credit scene should have you bouncing out of the theater with a joy, anticipation, curiosity, wonder, something. Because you're leaving the theater, you want to have a bounce in the person's step. I wasn't bouncing.
Chris, you remember like when there was that one post-credit scene where he slapped out, "We're calling it the Avengers Initiative."
But it's like, what can they build up here with this one? Because they've already told you that, hey, look, these next
but then
don't put a
yeah.
Let me get my butt out of the theater. I'm exhausted.
I didn't stay because I was expecting something. I stayed because I was talking to my friend and talking about the movie. So first, I disagree slightly. There is some kind of a happy-ish ending in that his father was found not guilty because he did actually change a little bit of history by putting the tomato cans on top, thus forcing him to face the security camera. So there is something of that. George Clooney's appearance here, which had been rumored, first I was like, haven't you worked all your career to try to disassociate yourself from Batman, and now here you are? I guess after you got your AFI Lifetime Achievement and your Kennedy Center honors, it's like, yeah, I might as well just do this just for the fun of it and be completely pointless. And as for the post credit scene, yeah, maybe that just reflects the state of the DCU, drunk on the street, drowning in water,
an afterthought.
Yeah, an afterthought. There's nothing there. Why is George? But the thing is, all right, look, Orange Hat was very adamant that George Clooney couldn't be here, and I had said that he was going to be there, but as a joke, not seriously, because that George Clooney Batman and Michael Keaton Batman are technically supposed to be the same Batman. So what am I supposed to make of all of this now? I'm
It's
perplexed.
like I said, this is the whole excuse. It's the multiverse. We can just do whatever we want now.
You
We
know,
don't
I
have to
feel like
follow
I missed
continuity.
something too. Like I wanted to find out who killed mom. So in the absence of it not being dad because dad's on the video, does that mean Ezra Flash killed mom? I mean, I still
Well, here's
don't
the
know who.
thing. So after the film came out, the director had to come out and clarify that yes, it was Reverse Flash that killed Barry's mom, even though Reverse Flash isn't in the movie at all. So you had a 2.5-hour movie that didn't even address the biggest elephant in the room of who actually killed Barry's mom. It's like the whole thing is like, well, we have to fight for his dad's innocence. Okay, well, who actually did it then? And for whatever reason, they didn't decide to answer that question in the 2.5 hours that they had. And the director has to come out after the fact, be like, oh yeah, we forgot to tell you, it was a character that wasn't in the movie at all.
If
You know,
have
So
to
it wasn't
explain that afterward-
antimatter Flash or
Yeah.
whatever that dude was. The
No,
third
it was
guy.
a completely different Flash altogether.
If you really have to explain something that was not in the movie after the fact, you failed.
Yeah.
You should explain something in the movie itself, not.
I mean, they only had 2 hours and 30 minutes. They didn't have enough time.
Yeah, and multiple reshoots. Keep on top of that as well. So yeah, somehow that the biggest plot hole in the entire film, everybody missed it up until its release.
Looking at the movie, a story where he goes back in time to save his mom. There are repercussions. There is a heartwarming finale that's bittersweet. He hugs his mom goodbye. That's the nuts and bolts of a decent story. I have no problem with that. I don't think that's terrible. I think you can work around that and build some story, but
Yeah, I could go ahead and just go like final thoughts here. It's like I agree with you, and for the most part, I feel like The Flash is just a very mediocre, straightforward like superhero film. Like if you just watch it just as it is, it's not as terrible. I know we haven't said too many positive things about it, but it's honestly not as bad as some of the other superhero films we've watched over the last few months. But I think the biggest problem here with this movie is that one, you marketed it in a way where people were expecting one thing and they're not going to get that when they go to the movie theater. Like they're expecting this is going to be like some Michael Keaton's going to like steal the show here. He really doesn't in the most part of this one. And then, like I said, you're expecting everyone to sympathize with at least a character played by an actor that nobody particularly likes at the moment, which is kind of another big disconnect. Like if it was a completely different actor altogether, I mean, I'd still give it somewhere about a 2 out of 5. I don't know, grand scheme of things, but that's just kind of what I felt about it. I didn't really hate it as much as I thought I was going to. That's probably the most positive thing I could say about the film in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I thought it was watchable. I got a couple laughs out of it. And I don't dislike Ezra Miller. I know a lot of people find him divisive on screen because he's weird and he's geeky and he's different. I think he's interesting, actually. I don't think it's a great character. I have a lot of problems with the movie, but I don't think he's the problem here. But
well,
Yeah, I gave it a 5.5. Upon reflection, originally I gave it a 6 out of 10 when I left the theater, but upon reflection, every day my score keeps dropping. And anyone that's
Like
asked
box
me should they go
office.
watch it, I told them point blank no, because look, I mean, door to door round trip, including waiting for the popcorn and the previews and the way. It was a 4-hour journey.
yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm some fancy pants guy where 4 hours of my life is like, this big valuable thing, but still, it was a half a day.
Mike, it sounds like you had some very good popcorn, though. I'm a little
was
jealous
so
of
good.
that.
It was so good, Chris. There's this one theater that I go to. It is so good. I don't know what makes it better than the other places. It's just so good.
Okay.
I don't
Now,
know,
you guys like
peanut
the
oil.
weirdos who put like the Reese's Pieces in your popcorn and eat it both like that? Are you one of those type of guys? Or?
No, but my
no.
popcorn stand, it has the different flavors, and I'm Mexican, so you need the chili with the salt and the butter, and and-
Tapatio.
yeah.
Well, first, I'm Mexican and I never put chili. I'm horrified by I'm horrified by it. But
Well,
I'm the waspiest Mexican in the world, all right? It's established.
dude, I've even dropped jalapenos for my nacho thing into
Yeah.
my popcorn.
yeah.
Oh, that sounds good.
I had that once and I was horrified. So I would give this a 1.5 out of 5.
Ooh.
I'm thinking that it might actually be better than Shazam. Because it's just this really wasn't anything. It wasn't anything.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that.
It wasn't like it was better. I don't want to say better. It wasn't as horrible as I had been led to believe. But it
Mhm.
We'll put that in the
wasn't-
poster.
Yeah, it was- yeah. But
Not
it was
as horrible as.
Yeah,
Mhm.
not as horrible as I was led to believe, but it's not that interesting. It doesn't really do anything. It doesn't tell anything. And yeah, I think it might have been better if George Clooney had been the main Batman instead of and Michael
Ooh,
Keaton popped up at the end.
with
It would have,
the bat, you know.
yeah, with bat nipples, and then Chris O'Donnell pops up as well. That might have been
I'm
more
about to say, what's
interesting.
Alicia Silverstone doing it these days? Is she still? Oh.
Anything's possible, but maybe that it would have given him a chance for redemption because
Oh
I
my
think
god,
Mike.
can you imagine bringing back Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze?
You out.
Here's
Oh,
what you
man.
can, Flash. Here's what you can do with your freedom.
It would it would have it would have worked much better if they had just bitten the bullet and brought in Grant Gustin to be an alternate Flash, and they would have joined forces, and that would have probably drawn more people to see this movie. But for right now, yeah, a 1.5. It's not horrible, but it's nothing that I would care to see again.
They probably should have just bitten the bullet and just shelf this thing like they did with Batgirl, because there's really nothing positive that came out of this entire movie going
If they
experience.
release this,
Well-
imagine how bad Batgirl is, though.
Right. And well, here's the
Yeah.
other thing too, is that now that they're going to lose as much as they're going to lose, whatever fears they had about maybe paying out some of the contracts on the gross, which they on the release, which they probably have written into some of these deals, they ended up picking the wrong thing, because if this thing ends up losing more than 350 million, there's no way that the other contracts that they would have had to pay out. I mean, I just can't imagine that they would be worth more than that. So Warner Brothers gambled and Warner Brothers lost.
Yep,
So
and
did
what-
we, frankly, as fans of DC characters. I think we all lost.
Yeah. And now all we have to look forward to is James Gunn at the helm of this entire universe. And I don't know. I don't know if anyone is interested in DC moving forward now, but it's like if that first Superman movie does not knock it out of the park, like this thing may already be dead on arrival, but it'll be the killing blow if that was
Jacob, you forget we've got Blue Beetle coming up.
Yeah,
All
everyone
right.
forgot we got Blue Beetle coming up.
and Mike and me and Paulie as the Mexicans, we will instantly relate to Jaime Reyes. He will be our new.
We
stand-in.
will?
Apparently so. Because
Oh,
he's
I made a
Mexican.
joke on Midnight's Edge this morning in the live chat. I was modding it while I was working, and I said they should have. I was going to tell James Gunn that he needs to have a new Blue Beetle movie, and it's going to call Blue Beetle Battle for the Border, where he goes up against his villain, Brown Cockroach.
Or would it have been better if they just called him the Cucaracha? And then
Yes, there you go. The
No,
Brown
I mean,
Cucaracha.
If you're gonna
Mhm.
get the cucaracha, you're probably gonna have to bring up Maria Felix and Dolores Del Rio. But since we can do AI now, maybe they'll come back and be like the super villainesses who will be fighting a Blue Beetle. No,
I got to tell you guys, as a DC fan, I mean, there's been moments of greatness in the last 20, 30 years here and there. Dark
Yeah.
Knight. But it's been a horrific overall. It has been a horrifically tough, dude. It's like I'm not sure what's worse for me, being an Oakland A's fan or being a DC Comics fan. And
you
movies.
mean a Las
Wow.
Vegas A's fan,
Brutal.
right?
Yeah, we're
Las
going to Vegas, baby.
Yeah.
Vegas, baby.
Yep.
You know, Wonder Woman was pretty good. Wonder Woman
Yeah.
was as good as Wonder Woman 2 was terrible.
Yeah, Wonder Woman actually made like my number one film that year.
Yeah.
It's good.
You're right.
84 was not. Yeah, because they DC, whatever reason, they did not plan it. Whatever the flaws of Marvel, it looked like it was planned movie to movie to movie. DC is like, all right, we'll go here, then we'll go there, and then we'll go here, and then it's kind of just hodgepodge.
Well, one more point here before we move on to our next film here. It's like leading up to this, they were seeming like they were possibly leaving the door open to keep Ezra Miller around if this film was a success. Now, I don't know if that's just like lip service because they couldn't bury the guy as the film was coming out, but I can't see any scenario where you threw The Rock under the bus, you threw Henry Cavill under the bus. It looks like Gal Gadot is gone now too, so she's probably not coming back either. Like the three most likable people in your entire franchise, you're going to keep Ezra Miller of all people. It's like, how do you even like rationalize that? Like as a studio, I just don't get it. Like remember when what was it, like 10 months ago, or not even that long, but when Black Adam came out, all the old media was saying that, oh, this movie only made $400 million. What a terrible flop for DC. Like, it's all over now. Now the last couple of movies that come out has done significantly worse than that. Like, I'm not even sure at this point if like Flash and what was the last one? Shazam 2. If they'll make $400 million combined at this point, is how bad these films are doing. So,
and also Flash is bombing overseas too.
Oh, big time. I think China performed terribly over there as well. So
they'd sooner watch The Little Mermaid than watch The Flash.
Yeah, maybe throwing the Rock under the bus wasn't such a great idea just because you got your fifis hurt that you went over your head. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe just go with his idea next time. That's all I got to say.
You think Mike, this was better than Fast X?
Yes.
No.
I say yes because at least we actually got an ending with this movie.
No,
unlike
actually, I don't know. I think Fast X was better. I don't know why.
Exactly. Jason Momoa was fun to watch in Fast X. He kept the whole thing together.
Yeah, he was camping it up, and
it was like the thread that held it all.
Yeah, he was like a very gay, flamboyant Joker, and then outside of that, he wouldn't have had a movie. Mike, how much longer are you staying with us? You got time to?
Well, here's what I can do. I've got a 30-minute West Coast call. If you guys want to do Blackening, which I haven't seen, I can come right back in about 35 minutes.
All right, I think we can do that.
And do Extraction.
You got time to do Blackening with us?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I guess
I'll come right back. Give me about 30 minutes. Let me go do this call, and I'll come back in about 10:40 East Coast time.
All right, no problem, man.
All right.
Well, I guess it's time for us to hop over to our second movie here of the night, which is a movie that unfortunately not nearly as good as The Flash. And I know it's not saying much after what we just saw here. Look, let me tell you the story because Christian doesn't know this story. A couple of weeks ago, I was telling Rob and Rick that I had put that new Seth Rogen movie, what was it, Joyride, that's coming out in a couple of weeks. I put that as my number one worst movie of the entire year. Now, keep in mind, I haven't seen it yet.
Seen it? Oh,
no. But the implication was because I know it's Seth Rogen and I know his style of comedy, he has to prove to me that somehow this is not the number one worst film of the entire year. And then I went to go see The Blackening last week, and that movie has now dropped from number 1 to number 2 because I even Rob said it himself. It's like, I cannot imagine a movie that's worse than what we're about to talk about right here. And it is a film called The Blackening, just in time for Juneteenth and a big Juneteenth celebration, because apparently that's a holiday now that we all have to acknowledge. So good luck with that one. I don't know where to start here with this one. We all saw the previews for this. The whole promotion, they're going back to that old thing of, hey, let's show the audience laughing at our movie, and now we'll get people into the theaters. It's like,
I hate that. I hate that with all of my soul.
Yeah.
So it's so cheesy. It just screams, we can't think of anything else. It means that the critic, well, I thought it meant that the critics would hate it because it's so bad. We'll get into that in a minute. But I just thought that was so tired and so...
I just want to point out that I went to a 9:30 screening today, and I was literally the only person in the theater, and that has not happened for a very long time.
Yeah,
where I was literally the only person there.
So here's the cat. Oh, I guess here's just the introduction to this story here. So this film is written by two people, Tracy Oliver, who is a graduate from Stanford University, and Dwayne Perkins, who is a graduate from DePaul University. Now, you wonder why is that relevant to this story? It's because neither one of them really have any acting, writing qualities whatsoever. Both of them have done like episodes of like Wildin' Out. And then I think the guy here, Dwayne, has been a writer on the show. Remember Amber Ruffin? Remember that interesting late night comedy show? So if you like Amber Ruffin, you like that style of comedy, then you'll love this, because this is probably one of the most hateful, downright just terribly written movies I've seen in just quite some time here. And I get it, it's supposed to be played off as a comedy, but when you know the people who are writing the jokes, I don't think that they view a lot of this stuff as a comedy here. So the setup of this film is that you have a bunch of black people in the woods, and the running joke here is that, we don't go to the woods because, that's not our thing, but they decide, hey, let's go to the woods and celebrate Juneteenth, because now it's a federal holiday, so we have to make a holiday out of it because this is a black movie. And essentially we get a very poorly written Saw parody where you have very offensive caricatures of black culture portrayed from the villain side, and you have like killers and stuff like that. Everything about this movie from start to finish feels low rent. The actors of this film, I know a couple of them are like Vine stars. They're not even like real actors. They're like literally people who have been doing like YouTube videos who they brought over to this film. So that was pretty bad off there. The writing of this thing is not stellar at all. And the whole time I'm watching this film, I'm thinking to myself, this just feels like someone who like does like music videos doing like a movie for the first time. And it's like from the second this whole thing started, I just kept rolling my eyes, like sinking deeper into my seat, like as I was going on here. Christian, I want to start off with you. What was your initial thoughts of going into this film? Did you think that it was going to be as bad as it was when you actually saw it?
No, I mean, I love horror comedy spoofs, so this is my genre. I was
Yeah.
rooting for it. I didn't have a lot of expectations because those trailers were so bad and that marketing campaign was weak as tea. But everything you mentioned is correct. And it was so amateurish from start to finish, the characterizations, the dialogue, the jokes, the directing. This wasn't a hack. This is Tim Story. Now, I know Tim Story is not Scorsese,
Yeah.
but he's done some decent films in the past. He knows how to put a camera on and make people around this, in the front of the camera do things. Like he did Barbershop, which was perfectly fine. He did this Fantastic Four movies aren't great, but they're watchable. I mean, this is a guy who's been in this industry for like 20 years. And it looks like someone stumbled onto the set, grabbed the camera and started waving it around. It is just amateurish. And the thing I mentioned is, first of all the black characters in the film all had the exact same worldview, which seems weird to me. And I think it'd be much more fun if a couple of them argued amongst themselves or had different points of view. But also the sheer hatred that everyone has for white people is really stunning. And the fact that I think it's like I mentioned in my review, it's almost like this should be a time capsule movie where you throw it in there and people say, what was the culture like in 2023? Well, we were taught to hate white people, whether you were white or brown or black, and that was accepted. And you can make a movie with characters who all hate white people, and it was totally cool, and you wanted to root for their survival. I just thought it was distasteful. But listen, I'm okay with all that politicking. If it's funny, if it's clever, if it's interesting. It didn't have a single scare, a couple of bad jump scares. And I thought a couple of the jokes for me landed. But that was it. It's a really bad movie. It's instantly in my top 5 worst of the year. There's no doubt.
Yeah, well, for me, it's like I always look at it from this perspective. It's like, okay, this is supposed to be a horror comedy, right? So obviously, if you're going to grade a movie, you have to look at it from two perspectives. How good is it as a horror movie and how good is it as a comedy? Yeah. As a horror movie, there's absolutely nothing scary about this film whatsoever. Not even like startling in your seat, like nothing. Like, they don't even try it in the horror aspect at all. And then you go to the comedy aspect. Well, how many times did I actually laugh like in the film? And I think to myself, I think the only part where I actually laughed when the dude got shot in the arm twice with the although like that's literally the only time like a remote smile came out in my face here. But yeah as you were saying here, it's like it's funny how look at this movie like Soul Man, for instance, because we did a movie night on Soul Man not too long ago, and it's a movie that talks about racism but doesn't kind of like in a funny way where they're really just mocking like the ideas of racism and bigotry, right? So it's like about, oh yeah, this is how people like actually like think about like black people, kind of in the more exaggerated state, poking fun at it, make it seem like just absolutely absurd. Where here it's just like they're just taking, like I said, stuff that you would see on like the Daily Show or like these obscure late night shows where it's just all hatred. There's no real comedy here. Like you've seen late night comedy shows over the last several years where they're talking about Trump for the most part, and there's no actual comedy to it. They all just hate Trump and they're just spewing it on this thing. And this is the same way we see here with this film. And you talking about the hate that they had for white people. The whole setup here is that you have like this one dorky black guy who admitted that he voted for Trump. And then everyone was like, okay, we're completely fine with killing this guy now because he voted for Trump. That's why. So of course he deserves to die, right? Like that's just like it is just passed off like a completely normal, rational thought in their head. And it's like I don't know if you guys think that you're being likable in this film, because for me, if I'm watching a horror film and there's a bunch of unlikable characters, the only joy that I get out of it is just watching them die one by one. But you don't even get the satisfaction of that in this film either. They're just sticking around throughout the entire course of the movie. So you just have these absolutely detestable characters who think that they're the good guys, and this is your entire movie. Rick, before I get back to Christian here, I know you saw this one. I know you love it just as much as we did. What was your initial thoughts on the film? Is the way that this whole thing was set up?
Well, I thought that I know it's supposed to be a horror comedy, but what I thought is I wish they had gone either one way and just been a complete spoof, and they could do spoof of like Get Out or Us, all those
Yeah,
Peele films, or make it a straight horror film where they are being kind of targeted one by one and they die in increasingly gruesome ways. But they could never decide. So they kind of tried to go both ways and it didn't work. Um, it was the killer, to quote unquote, the killer was so obvious right from the get go. And I was like, I know who's going to do it. I know who's responsible for this, and I can even venture a guess as to why. The characterizations were, for me, almost stereotypical. It was like there's nothing original. I mean, they were not really interesting people here. You got a lot of stereotypes. You had the very loud, obnoxious woman who just said, certain racial epithet over and over.
Yeah.
You had what is it?
The
Steve
overcompensating biracial woman.
Yeah, and you got the Steve Urkel type who's just there, obviously creepy. And some of the line deliveries were really embarrassing for me. Like there was that one part where Dietrich Bader as Ranger White, obviously Ranger White, comes in and one of them says, "Oh, I've never been so thankful to have a white savior." The way it was delivered was like, you're not even acting. You're like, what are you? You're not trying here.
That's not a bad line, right? You could actually deliver that line with a little bit of.
You could, but there was nothing. I admit there were a couple of times that I did laugh, like when one of them refers to the Blackening board game as, was it Jim Crow Monopoly? Okay, I did smile at that. When one of them picks up the candlestick and he says, "What do you think this is? Clue?" All right, Colonel Mustard. Okay, those were kind of amusing moments. But I just thought that I don't. Okay, I know that you guys were saying that it's hateful. I guess it's hateful, but for me it was just boring, and it just didn't want to commit.
Yeah.
If it had gone full spoof, I probably would have enjoyed it more. If it had gone full horror, I would have enjoyed it more.
But here's the question though, like this movie wasn't a spoof because they weren't actually spoofing anything. Like there was no references to like any other movies like in this. It was supposed to be like a comedy, but it's like I guess the humor was just in all the race related jokes that were in the movie. Like there was no frame of reference to the story.
There was nothing there. There was nothing funny. I guess what was funny is the idea of a black guy voting for Trump twice, and I know that that's a ridiculous concept. We wouldn't. I could never picture any black man voting for Trump twice.
Who would do something
can
like
you
that?
Can you, Jacob? Can you picture any black man voting for Trump twice?
I can't think of not one person in my life.
No.
But the thing is that character you're mentioning voted for Trump twice. It was like a quick, easy, joke line. But then everything else about that character was right in line with all his buddies. So he really wasn't in any way different than his friends. He just mystically voted for Trump twice, which really makes no sense. I want to point out, I mentioned Tim Story directed this. This really sticks in my craw. There's a scene, maybe mid to late in the movie, where one of the female characters is fighting hand-to-hand combat with the killer. And I think she's got like 3 knives in her hands or arrows or something, and she's like waving it like Wolverine. The scene is so poorly choreographed. I couldn't see what was going on. Nothing made visual sense. I thought, this is just, who made this movie? I mean, I was flabbergasted by it. It was so
well. The takeaway wasn't supposed to be about how great the choreography was. The takeaway is that you were supposed to realize that black women always have to save everyone. That was the takeaway.
That was the direct line. That was the actual line, and I was like, "Why?" I wrote in my review also. It's coming out later. If she had said that afterwards, that might have been funny. If she had said nothing, that might have been more dramatic. But the fact that she's saying it as she's using the candlestick to smash that guy's head.
Yeah.
It's like it's not even believable within this scenario
You know,
because
if she muttered that line after it was all said and done as she walked away, maybe that's a way to sell it.
yes, but it was so obvious. It was so obvious.
Well, see
there.
that requires like an actual writer who knows what he's doing and knows how to like put himself in those situations. But like I said, you got late night actors.
It
doing
is
this whole
interesting.
thing.
Go ahead,
Well,
Rin.
no, I was saying it is interesting that you mentioned that one of these writers worked on Wild 'N Out because I see that every morning when I go to the gym. But I mean, there's no audio, but just from what I'm seeing, I'm going, why is this remotely interesting? Why are people still watching this?
You
But
can say that about everything that's on MTV these days. It's not specific to Wild 'N Out. Let
I
me
saw
ask
this
you.
movie with, I'm sorry,
No,
Jacob.
go
I
ahead.
saw this movie with my son who's 14,
Mhm.
and he loves horror, he loves comedy. He was giving me eye rolls through the whole movie, but I have to say the
Mhm.
audience, there was a decent amount of laughter in it. It was one of those movies where even when nothing remotely funny is happening on screen, I had the guy next to me was chuckling through the whole movie. Like I don't I don't know how you could exist
did he
in a
have some
world.
mollies? Did he have
Yeah,
some
see, I
mollies
would have to
during
like
the
just
movie?
turn around and like give him like a weird stare, like as he's like laughing. It's like really.
You know, marijuana is legal in Denver, so maybe that explains part of
Well,
it. But
there you go.
there were more chuckles around the theater than in my seat or my son's seat.
Yeah, my sober theater, there was like barely any chuckles there. So maybe that's a difference maker there.
There was stone cold silence at my screening. I can say that.
Let me ask
Well,
you. Let me ask you guys this question here because I've noticed this trend with quote unquote horror movies in the last few years. With this new woke diverse storytelling that they're doing now, they put all of these characters into this movie, but in their minds they can't actually kill any of these people off because that would be quote unquote problematic. So we're just stuck with these unlikable characters throughout the course of the film. This is the same thing that we saw in the Scream franchise where I don't know if you saw Scream 6, but it got to a ridiculous amount of where we're keeping these characters alive who should be dead up to this point. Like it's almost kind of parody in of itself. We saw this with the movie They Them last year, where it was like, well, everyone in the movie is LGBTQ. Oh yeah, we can't kill them, so we'll just muddy around for 90 minutes until we just kill the camp concerts because we can't actually kill people in this film. When you guys do stuff like that, especially kind of in a whodunit sense, you're making your movie so entirely predictable from the start because you already know who's gonna live, who's gonna die, and you probably know who the killers are. There's no actual surprise, there's no actual suspense in this movie because all we need to know is like, well, progressives wrote this, so the black guys are gonna be the good guys, the white guys gonna be the bad guys, and anyone who's in this insert community here is gonna live because they can't kill them off. They just can't do it. So it's like, why are we even wasting our time here if we can pretty much figure out what's going to happen 5 minutes in?
it's a great point, and I did notice that about They Them, which was just flat out horrible. And I've actually seen some decent woke-ish horror movies in recent maybe last year or two. So it's not impossible to make them. But yeah, I agree. That's a weird move that they're doing, and also it almost eliminates the dramatic stakes. If you I mean, midway through the Blackening, you know everyone's going to live. There was no doubt in your mind. And I'm sorry if this is a spoiler, but I mean, it's just it makes everything less interesting. I want to quickly pivot. When I see a movie and I hate a movie and I really feel strongly about it, I know that some critics will disagree with me. I'm a big boy, I can take it. But when I go see a movie and I hate a movie and it's really aggressively awful, and I go on Rotten Tomatoes and it has like an 80 to 90% fresh rating, something stinks. I'm sorry. Something stinks about the critics' reaction to this movie. You guys have any thoughts?
I made this comment a couple weeks ago, and I stand by this. If the movie Soul Plane came out today in 2023, it would have 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, and they would convince you that it's a good movie simply because it's a majority black cast. And that's where we're at now, because you have critics who are legitimately afraid. And these are people within this progressive sphere because they've created this narrative that if you criticize anything that has insert a group here in this movie, then you're an ist, you're a phobe, whatever the case may be. So they can't sit here and say that a movie with a majority black cast is bad because that means you're racist if you do that. So they're just going to say like, oh yeah, no, this is totally a great movie. So you see a bunch of 2.5 ratings with like positive meters on Rotten Tomatoes because they're trying to dance around the issue that, yeah, this film sucks, but we can't just come out and say that because, you know, we've built this world now where you can't come out and criticize things that are created by certain people. So yeah, this is what you get now. This is 80% on Rotten Tomatoes for this movie. Are you serious?
It's
this
stunning.
is the hill you're going to die on?
It is puzzling. I really wonder what they genuinely see. I mean, some of them might genuinely find it funny, and that's that's their business. But if they're going to go into this and say, "Look, I can't criticize this movie because it has a predominantly black cast. We're in Juneteenth now, and this is about racism, and it's a satire on racism." No, I mean you should judge the movie based on what you see. If you think it's funny, fine. If you think it's scary, fine. I didn't think it was either scary or funny, but obviously they saw something that I didn't see. And this happens more often than not. If you want to get your political or socio-political views into this, no, it's not. You're not reviewing the movie. You're reviewing some. I don't know what you're reviewing. It wasn't this. I will say though, Jacob, I think the Soul Plane, is that what it is? Soul Plane
Yeah.
would not just be a best of film here. I think we're talking Criterion. Really, Turner Classic Movies. We're gonna have Professor Stewart introduce it for the Juneteenth.
Soul Plane was
along
just
with
before its time. If it had waited after Black Lives Matter, then it would have been hell is one of the like. I'm pretty sure Jordan Peele is going to come out with a remake in the next few years here. So who knows?
And I think that was Jay Farrow in the beginning of the film in the prologue.
Yeah.
that is.
And he had more screen presence, more charisma, more everything than every actor who followed him after that. I was like, oh.
Well, he's one of the guys who are actually experienced in this movie as an actor, and he's actually legitimately funny. So you just throw him away in like the first 5 minutes of the movie for a bit, and then like he's literally the best actor you have in this entire film. You don't use him at all.
They couldn't afford him after that. They had to get these cheaper actors to perform in this movie. I will say I did also
what's
laugh.
His name? What's his name? Melvin Gregg. Like I know he's like a Vine star, so I mean he's not even like a real actor. Ex Mayo is some writer from like literally the Daily Show, a staff writer from the Daily Show, and she's in this film. It's like, what are we doing here, people?
The only name I really recognized was Dietrich Bader. The only white person in this whole movie. It's the only name I recognize. I will admit, I did laugh when when the killer is torturing Morgan and the wig comes off. Okay, I did laugh at that. I was like, wow, that's really a good wig.
Yeah, strong in quality, right? And then like the last point here, and Christian kind of like talked about this too. It's like you put all these characters together, but they all think the same way. They all have the same viewpoint. So it's basically just multiple variations of the exact same character. There's no real variety here. And obviously you don't have experienced enough writers here to actually make any of these characters stand out in any kind of way. So you just have a super bland movie throughout from every step of the way, from the writing to the direction to the stunt choreography. Like everything about this seemed low rent. This is a movie that should have been on Peacock. Like we talked about them being an awful movie. Like this is a Peacock movie. If it came out on Peacock, I could have been like, okay, look, it's a streaming movie. This is nothing but content, whatever.
Well, for me, I thought that these people, it was strange to believe that they were friends because they all seemed to just dislike each other.
They hated each other. They were all miserable to each other.
Yes, it's like they're not real frenemies because they just seem to have, and they also seem to have such a massive chip on their shoulder. Every time someone says something, every time they interact with someone, they're always angry.
It's like they have to protect their blackness at all times. It's like it can't just be like, hey, look, we're all in the cabin in the woods. We're just gonna have a good time and let all this stuff go. It's like it's literally Black Twitter 24/7 in these people's minds. And look, when you're dealing with people who are from the University of San Francisco and DePaul, which is in Chicago, you're dealing with people who are in this mindset of LA and Chicago and New York 24/7. So this is normal to them because this is what they experience on their everyday life. But people who aren't in that bubble look at this as like none of you people are likable. You're all detestable. Why should I care about any one of you?
And the chemistry between the friends was non-existent. It was like they just met, they went to the cabin randomly and they hung out with each other. Just there's no connection between them. And you need that sort of fun. You need that sort of camaraderie.
That might have been interesting in a variation of And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, where why don't we make this group different individuals who've never met, and they're brought together, and now
Mhm.
they have to join forces because a killer is targeting them and they
Yeah.
don't know which one it is. That might have been clever, but instead you've got all these people who are supposed to be friends, but they seem to just hate each other. They're always sniping at each other and very antagonistic toward each other. I mean, they're not like the friends that I have. The friends that I have, we disagree on many things, we agree on some things, but it's just, I don't know. They just seem to be always so upset with, like I said, I think I said twice in my review, they seem to have a big chip on their shoulder. Like they're always waiting to be attacked
Yeah.
and to have someone go after them for any reason, no matter how small. But no, I mean, to be perfectly honest, since I never watched Friends, I don't know how many black people ever were on Friends. So
Oh, and by the way, I love horror movies. I always have. I don't think I've ever noticed the whole black people die in the beginning of horror movies trope. And I try to Google it. I feel like there was one or two sites that debunked it. I don't
Well,
I
here's
don't
the
remember
problem.
that.
That this whole concept grew from like an Eddie Murphy bit from like the 1980s. That just kind of like grew like a life of its own. So this is an outdated stereotype by at least 30 to 40 years that they decided to base the entire movie on in 2023. And it's like not only that, but I think Rick had just made the point here, and I'm blanking on pulling Spencer right now because I literally just had it on top of my head. But yeah, it's like I don't know like what the thought process was behind this whole project here. Like everything about this just seems rotten, and it just seemed like I don't know what they were thinking they were going to get out of this
I I
thing.
don't I don't know if it would count, but in Anaconda, Ice Cube lives to the end.
Uh,
So I don't know if that counts as a horror film.
in Night of Living Dead was it Dwayne Jones? He doesn't he
Yeah,
dies, but at the very, very end. But
and he's a central character.
he's
So
the
it was
hero.
very, yeah, it was very rare what in the 1960s
Yeah,
to have the
1968.
the black the black male as the lead in a horror film, and he actually lived. Well, I guess he lives to the very end.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's, I don't know where that trope began, but then I don't watch a lot of horror films.
And I think horror films in the 80s were really white. And I think most of the characters were white. I mean, you could say that they lack diversity, and that's probably a fair critique in
Mhm.
Hollywood, certainly. But I think it was
Well,
always the couple having sex that died and died early. Like that was
Yeah,
the
I mean, that
trope.
that was the whole point in Scream, wasn't it? Scream or Scream 2, that one of
Yeah.
them lives because he's still a virgin.
mhm. Well, that's the other thing I was going to mention. As I just remember, you were saying that here. It's like the other running gag of this film is like these people truly believe, like especially in this little circle here, that in their world it's white people who want to kill them 24/7. Like they repeatedly make the joke throughout the entire film
I
that white
know.
people just want them dead just because they're black, and it's like there's people out there who truly believe this. Like they're in a completely different universe than the rest of us right now.
And what if they had a character who was poking holes in that philosophy, that was
Hmm.
jabbing at them and saying and challenging them? I mean, that would at least create some tension and maybe some more humor or some humor.
Yeah, but they hate that person in real life, so they
I
wouldn't
know.
even allow that to happen. So yeah, this is just an absolutely just terrible film from start to finish. This is my worst film of the year. It's knocked down House Party, which was the worst movie of the year that I've actually seen. And for the time being, Joyride is my number two, and Seth Rogen is going to have to pull in some serious work to make a movie that is somehow even worse than this. Like,
You have reserved a slot, the number 2 slot for Joyride.
yeah, until proven otherwise, it'll be firmly in my number two. So,
Guilty until proven innocent. I love
yeah.
it.
So yeah, this is a 0 out of 5 for me. I don't know about you guys.
Oh, out of 5, a half. I got a couple of chuckles. I'll send him the half.
May I might, I'll probably be the most generous here. I might just go to a 1 because I still hate a book club, The Next Chapter, and that stars 4 old white women. So I hated that one more, and I think I would rather watch the Blackening than I would
Okay.
this. I mean, it's short. It's like 97 minutes, and I mean it's not good, but there were a couple of moments that I thought were amusing. I don't know. It's like it's a
And,
nothing. It's a nothing movie.
and even though Rob couldn't join us this week, he did let us know his thoughts on the movie. He said, "Holy crap, that was effing awful." So that was his that was his quick review of the film there. So yeah, not a good movie. I would say avoid this out of all the movies that you're gonna watch this weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, by comparison, The Flash is an absolute masterpiece of what we got here. So
Oh wow, that's a pretty low bar there, Jacob. But
Mhm.
what can I tell you? I mean, you need not worry because there would be no way that any black man would ever vote for Trump, not even once
Twice.
or even
Twice.
twice.
Never.
Never. All right, then. Well, I know Mike is gonna join us back in for our last movie. I know you got to go here too. So, Christian, I'm gonna go ahead and give you the floor here. You joined us
Yeah.
here for another Monday night here on the Movie Review Cast. So, let people know where they can find you. I mean, you're pretty much everywhere now, like Outkick, Daily Wire. I mean, you got your own thing going. So, let people know where they can find more of you.
Yeah, I'm really steering people to my podcast, the Hollywood in Toto podcast, and I'm really focusing on artists who've been canceled, right-leaning creatives, people like that. I'd love to get more people on the left side of the aisle for a nice friendly debate. That remains to be seen. I tried once, and he said his bosses wouldn't allow it, so I have to keep trying on that front. But it's really important to give certain people voices in our culture because they are being silenced, and if they're being silenced, they will be heard on my show. So the Hollywood in Total podcast comes out each week, but I do pop out bonus episodes as well. And then you can find me on Twitter at Hollywood in Toto.
All right, man. Hey, maybe you can have me, Rick, or Rob on your show one of these days too.
I would like that. I would like that.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
gotta get the Mexican. You gotta get the Mexican voice in there.
you got to be careful with Rick because he talks like a woman and he will literally talk you to death. So you have to like
Oh.
reel him in every now and then.
Well,
as
that's
well.
the fun of a podcast. You go on
That's right.
forever. All right. Besides, Christian A is too nice of a guy to cut me off, and B, if he does so, that would
Give him
be
5 minutes. You won't be as nice
That-
anymore.
hey, he tolerated me for a whole baseball game. So
That's right.
And secondly, if he tried to cut me off, that's using his white privilege.
That's
I'm
true.
not. I am still struggling with the idea that I'm now apparently a white supremacist. Because Mexicans are now white supremacists. So
This is the most diverse white supremacist outing that I
Yeah,
could imagine.
exactly, right.
yes.
All right, man.
All right,
Thanks
gentlemen.
for joining us here.
Thank you
We'll
for
see you
inviting me.
next time. Thanks, Christian. All right. Well, since Mike is still up with his call right now, I guess it's up to us to start our final film here of the night, which is Extraction 2, the Chris Hemsworth saga. So let me kind of rewind here and give you my thoughts on kind of where this whole thing started. You've seen a lot of Chris Hemsworth in the Thor movies. You probably see him in other movies that aren't very good as well. The Men in Black movie was not very good. Was it the Ghostbusters
Spiderweb.
movie?
Was it that Spiderhead?
Spiderhead was the name of the movie. Now, he was pretty good there. I'll give him credit, but
Wasn't
I
too
mean,
bad.
as far as his like big like blockbuster films are, like he's been in some really awful stuff. Like
What was
it's
that,
gotten to the
Black
point
Cat?
now where like yeah, that one too. It's gotten to the point now where the last Thor movie was so bad. He's publicly coming out and saying that he really doesn't want to come back and do another Thor movie because they've been so awful. I mean, even he knows at this point that like, yeah, these things are just like awful. Like, there's no saving any of this. By the way, I do see Zero Dozer and Colcassa Cage on Kick. By the way, so hey, by the way, if you're on Kick, I mean, I see 5 people watch us right now. Go ahead and sub so you can catch more of our stuff later on here. But yeah, look, he's been in some bad stuff. 2020 happened and all the theaters shut down, the entire world shut down. So it's like if you wanted to watch a new movie, it had to be on streaming. You had no other option. So he released a film in 2020 called Extraction. And I watched the movie. I loved the movie. I will still go at bat for this movie. And as a matter of fact, I watched this film here and I was so disappointed by it. I went back and watched the first one to think, well, did I overrate the first movie? Was there something wrong? It's like, no, the first movie still holds up. I don't know what happened here. But the idea here is that Chris Hemsworth plays I guess a merchant or a mercenary who specifically goes into dangerous territory to extract people out of bad situations. That's kind of his job. And in the last movie, I believe he went to Mumbai and went and got like a kid out from like a criminal underworld. It was like him and like another bad guy who was like just as cunning and tough as he was. So it was a very great dynamic. You had great villains, great cinematography was great action. So it was like, wow, Chris actually like put him in the right role, he can actually be an action star, which is why I was excited for this film Extraction 2, because it's like, okay, well, let me see what he's going to do with the second movie. Let's see what he's going to do with the second part. Is he going to legitimately build like kind of his own franchise here? Like, I'm not going to say it's, John Wick or anything like that, but could he have something to that degree here in the Netflix universe? And this is really his opportunity here to make something of his own outside of the MCU, outside of all these terrible movies that he's been in. So the bar was pretty high from what I saw with the first film. And I think the fundamental problem here is that Netflix saw the success that the first one had, and they decided, well, you know what? Instead of doing kind of giving Chris Hemsworth his own franchise, let's make a cinematic universe. And by making a cinematic universe, we have to propel the other characters up to be an equal footing with him. So that way, when the second movie is successful, we can be like, oh, well, let's give this character a spinoff. Let's give this character a spinoff. And let's focus more on like, no, no, no. Rick, I'm gonna start with you. Have you seen this first movie, or was this like your first experience with Chris Hemsworth here?
Uh, no, I've never seen I've never even heard of Extraction, to be perfectly blunt, and I don't even remember. Was I supposed to watch Extraction too?
Yes. you,
No. No, I didn't. I can share some thoughts first off on Chris
okay.
Hemsworth.
Well, at least on my opening monologue there, what did you think about kind of
Yes.
Chris Hemsworth and the state of his career?
All right. First, I've always insisted that he's not an actor. He could be a potential action star, but he's not an actor. He became famous because he played Thor, and not because of his great acting prowess. Any movie that he has been either the lead or maybe even like the supporting character, none of them have done well. Spiderhead. I mean, that
Mhm.
was kind of fine. I wasn't as big a fan as you and Rob were. I hated the Ghostbusters movie, and because I think he was trying too hard to be goofy and funny and
Mhm.
being the himbo. Granted, he's I guess another beautiful looking man, but I never saw Black Hat, and apparently I was not the only person who never saw Black Hat. And any of the other movies, I never saw Men in Black International. But again, it's always been this very strange effort to try to make Chris Hemsworth into a star. I don't think it's quite taken. But I've never seen him do anything that was like a serious drama. When is he going to do like a Merchant Ivory, Room with a View type production? One of the things that hampers him is the fact that he still has a very strong Australian accent. He's not going to sound like an American or even a was it a mid Atlantic accent like Cary Grant would have. He doesn't have that. He sounds Australian. He'll always sound Australian. Even in Ghostbusters, he sounded Australian. So he's limited in what he can do. Russell Crowe can sound. I mean, technically, I think he's from New Zealand, but he was born. I think he was born in New Zealand and went to Australia. He can sound American, and he has. Nicole Kidman, well, technically she was born in Hawaii, but she also can lose her Australian accent. Chris Hemsworth has never. Whatever the problems of Liam Hemsworth, he at least can sound more American. So Chris Hemsworth is very limited in what he can do. So he's never been a star, and I don't think he will be. As for this whole thing about building a cinematic universe in Extraction 2, I think it's a poor decision because people aren't going to go see all these minor characters. If you want to build up maybe one or two characters, and you're going to have to guide me on this, if you want to see one or two characters, I mean, one character maybe. I think one character would be enough, like a supporting character that you can build off. But you can't just spin off a whole multiverse or universe or cinematic universe out of out of two films, one of which you really don't a lot of people don't know about, and the other one that's on Netflix. So I can't be particularly impressed. But what exactly was it about the first Extraction that you really liked?
Well, like I said, the first Extraction is just a straight up action movie, and I would recommend instead of watching this one first, to go back to watch the first movie so you kind of understand like the reference here. But it was basically Chris Hemsworth going into hostile territory in the Indian country, I believe. I'm make sure the exact name of the country in the first movie, but he was going into enemy territory. There was another mercenary who was after him and the kid that he was trying to protect. So it was kind of like, this cat and mouse game between these two highly trained killers. And by the way, you also have like the assassins of the warlord who are after him as well. So it made for a very very good dynamic that they were going with, and it made for a good film. Now, what they did here with this movie was that there's a female character. I want to make sure I get her name right here. Her name is Nick Khan, who's played by Golsep Friani, who's an Iranian actress. Excuse me, Iranian and French, which is just way too many nationalities. Like pick one. But the first movie, she was kind of there to be like his like radio comms like support, and then towards like the end of the film, as he's trying to escape, she's giving him like cover fire as a sniper to go in here. Well, in this movie, they decide that, well, now that they're working together, quote unquote, they're partners, she has to have more of a equal footing with him. So she becomes more of the hand-to-hand combat weapons expert, where she's literally like beating up the guys like 3 times her size, even like literally killing one dude who's like at least, let's say, 6 times her size at one point in the movie. So the reason why they were doing this, obviously, is not just because of the whole, well, it's Netflix and female empowerment. It's that they specifically wanted to do. They knew they had something with Chris Hemsworth here. They knew that there was a third movie coming out, but it's like, hey, let's not just do a third movie here. Let's also give this other character a shine here so she can have her own spin-off movie that we can put on the platform as well. Thinking that everyone's gonna love the female character from the Extraction series. So in a couple of years, we can have a movie just focused on her because she's a tough female badass as well. And then there was another character played her brother in the film, played by Adam Besa. And even though like he's kind of like equal footing with her too, so it's like instead of taking what they had with Chris Hemsworth and letting him be the focus, they were like, well, let's give equal screen time to all these other characters, so that way we can like kind of prop them up and give them the rub, even though this is really supposed to be his own thing. Now, I can't complain at the end of the day. I'm pretty sure he's a producer on this one. The Russo brothers are a producer on this one. I think Joe Russo is the one who wrote this one. He wrote the first one as well. So there, you still have that MCU mentality attached to this whole thing, even though they're not officially a part of this universe anymore. I mean, a part of that universe anymore, but yeah, it felt like that they were trying to jump too far ahead of where they were, even though this is only the second film, where you're still trying to establish an audience. Because, like, yeah, you had a big hit with the first one, but you got to reel people in for the second one for them to really grab hold into it. If you're trying to stretch yourself way too thin on movie number two, this whole thing's going to fall apart. It's not going to work out. I feel like that's kind of the big problem that I had here.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the Russo brothers also handle The Gray Man, my second worst film of, was it last year or the year before?
I do believe they wrote that one. Yep, they wrote and directed that one. Joe Russo wrote that one and directed that one as well.
All right, so we're having a similar situation here with The Gray Man that we did. We're having an Extraction 2 based on what you're telling me. You have another strong female, although I don't remember if Ana de Armas was able to beat up people, 5 times her size in The Gray Man, but another movie where they're trying to spin off characters. Because if you remember in The Gray Man, I think there was a character called Lone Wolf, and he was supposed to be like I think an Indian or a Tamil Sri Lankan assassin, super assassin. He was there for a little while, but nothing major. And if they're going to do a Gray Man too, I think they might want to focus on him. So it's another trope that the Russos seem to have, where they're going to introduce a character with the hopes of creating more films, or maybe even spin-offs. You don't have you need to earn a spin-off. Like what was it with again Anna de Armas? Was it Ballerina? That there's still talk of having her do a spin-off for the John Wick movies. Is that correct?
I want to say yes, but yeah, let me check
But
that one just to make sure.
but at least, if I mean there's talk, but if that's the case, at least she's been introduced as a character in this universe, and it's coming out like a couple movies later. It's not something that's being thrown at you right away, and I don't think that they went in with that idea. With this Extraction 2, based on what you're telling me, they seem determined to make uh, like I guess more films and keep them going. It's interesting though that they want to keep this franchise going without Chris Hemsworth. Now, how old is he? Like I guess 40s already? Like in his
Chris Hemsworth has to be at least 40 now, or at least close to 40, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
40 some odd,
Yeah, he turns 40 in August.
oh gosh, I feel old. So I can say is that yeah, I mean, I guess he could keep it going. He could be eventually in another, he could be in an Expendables movie if he really wanted to, because he's reaching that age. But
I mean,
there's
even the Expendables is like, even those old guys is like they can't do it anymore. So I don't know.
all I can tell you is that um, it doesn't sound very appealing. I'm just curious though. Again, because I didn't see this movie, and I'm sorry, I did not realize that. I mean, I thought my assignment was the Blackening,
Well, I
and
mean, I did tell you in the chat that we were actually going to watch the other two movies, so you just weren't paying attention when I
oh,
said it.
okay. Well, I don't really remember. But all I could tell you is that
Just real quick, just let me answer that from Mephisto. Chris Hemsworth literally just said either yesterday or today that he has no idea what's going on with the status of that Hulk Hogan movie. So I don't even know if that's even still a thing right now. I think that's still in like the early stages of pre-production at this point. So I don't even know if that's coming out.
is he going to recreate the sex tape?
He thinks he's gonna say the N word on a sex tape where he's having sex with Bubba the Lunchbrush's wife.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that would get it like an NC-17. Um, but I'm curious. Really, what was the main? What was it that you liked about the first Extraction that you didn't end up liking, apart from the idea that they're maybe building up secondary characters as
Well, here's the thing, and I can tell you exactly what happened here. So in this movie, the way that it was marketed, everyone was talking about there's this big 21-minute one-shot sequence that's in the film, right? It's in like the first act or so of the film where they're in this prison and he has to like fight his way out of the prison. So it's like he's shooting people and he's like fighting all of these like prisoners in order to get out, right? And that's kind of how they built up the whole thing. The problem is that outside of that one sequence, they clearly didn't have anything else with this movie like at all. They put all of that into that 121-minute sequence. This is a 2-hour movie, by the way. So outside of that, it's like, well, we blew our load there. So what else are we gonna do for the next 90 minutes? I don't know. And that's kind of the problem where in the first film, the pacing of the film was much more substantiated, where the action was good, but they didn't like throw everything into like one little circle to the point where they didn't have anything else to go off of after that. And then, of course, in between what they're doing there with that part of the film is that they're trying to, like I said, prop up some of these other characters here to take up more shot. Idris Elba is in the movie. He's only in it for like a couple of scenes, but he's kind of like, this Mr. Nobody shadowy figure where it's like he talks about, his client that he works for, but nobody knows who it is and we don't know his name and all of this good stuff. So it's just all kind of just like flashy and mysterious, but like I said, it seems like okay, now we can use this to build up all of these other projects, and in the future, it's like you still have to sell the film here, and I feel like you didn't do a good enough job selling it here. The whole story of this film is about they're in I think the country of Jordan, if I'm not mistaken. Not Jordan. What's the other one? Georgia. Georgia. That's the other country. They're in the country of Georgia, and so it's a woman and her kids are in prison and they've both been sent there by the kid's father, who I guess wants the mother dead for some reason, but I don't know why the kids are in prison as well. It doesn't really seem well thought out, but so he's trying to save the woman and her kids from his father, who's like this big warlord who pretty much like runs the entire country because it's super corrupt. So that's the basis here. And then when they escape, they have to somehow find a way to escape the entire country because like I said, this guy controls everything. He's not just going to let him run away with his wife and kids without any kind of repercussion. So that's pretty much your dry premise of what this entire film is supposed to be here.
Well, that doesn't sound particularly exciting to me. I'm just puzzled. Did they give the reason as to why the kids were also dragged into this story?
Like I said, it's just that he's evil. He's just an evil douche, evil bag of douche. That's all that we were giving up to go off of there.
Hmm. Again, it doesn't sound too appealing, but uh, it's not. Go
Just for
ahead.
me, it's like Netflix, like everything Netflix touches just turns to crap. Like unless they're importing a television show for like another country, everything they touch turns to crap. I think they had like a first good movie by mistake. It wasn't like a whole lot of like for them it wasn't any high stakes going into like the first one. So when the first one became a hit, they started thinking about all these ideas about what they were going to do around it without just going with what they had. And in the course of doing that, they pretty much subverted everything that was good about the first movie and kind of stripping it down to make it bigger. And by doing that, you kind of removed what everyone liked about it, which was the action sequence. Like I said, you get a good 20-minute bit there. Nothing really matches that throughout the course of the film. That was just like that's all the money that they had for that one bit. So you don't have the compelling good guys, you don't have the compelling bad guys that you had in the first film. You even had like the mercenary in the first film, or it was kind of like this floating the line between good and evil, kind of playing both sides, and you don't get any character that's nearly as compelling in this film at all. So I mean, it just feels like this whole thing was just kind of a missed opportunity here. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a horrible movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's not bad, but I think with the hype that they had with the first film, this was just a major disappointment to me from start to finish. So, unless you have 80 other questions here, I guess I could wrap this up by saying that if you want to watch Extraction, in all honesty, watch the first movie. The first movie is far superior than this one. And if you want to go back and watch Extraction 2 after you watch the first one, you'll understand with the context of how much they really dropped the ball with this one. It's this whole movie is crafted for mindless entertainment for mindless audiences. So I don't know if anyone wants to wait another 3 years for the next movie is supposed to come out here, but
Did they
I don't think
promise?
it's worth that time.
Did they
Oh yeah,
promise?
they've
They,
they've announced that they're working on a third one, and considering the fact there was 3 years between this one and the 2021, I'm assuming that the third one will probably get released somewhere like 2026. So
well, it might not because because I think was it the pandemic probably affected the production of Extraction 2. So they might have a better shot of making this go faster than Extraction and Extraction 2. But yeah, I really don't have much to add. And again, I'm
I mean,
sorry.
the only thing about the COVID that affected this is that they shot this in 2021, and because of the pandemic, they had to move that. It was supposed to be shot in Australia, and then they shot it in Prague instead. So I don't know how much that affected the development as far as that goes, but yeah.
Well, wasn't that the same thing that they did with the Gray Man? They shot that. Didn't they shoot that in Prague as well?
Yeah, because like they like shooting all these big movies in like Australia because they can use the scenery, and I guess it's like some tax credits there. But there at the time, Australia was like, yeah, if you don't have the vaccine, you can't come here at all, and everyone had to be 100% forced to get the vaccine, or else they couldn't shoot the movie there. Clearly, that wasn't going to happen, so they have to find another country who has a slightly more lenient COVID laws there. So yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I might be able to catch both of these. Now, are both of them on Netflix?
Yes.
Oh,
They're both
okay.
they're both on Netflix. So, like I said, watch the first one first. Because, like I said, if you watch the first one, then you'll understand what I'm saying here with the second one. The first one is a far superior movie. So that's kind of my recommendation there. As far as the second movie, Extraction 2, I give it a 2 out of 5. It's just very mediocre to me. Like I feel like they kind of removed all the heart that was in the first one with the second one. So
But I mean, think about it. That's the Extraction 2 is probably the best movie that you saw this weekend.
actually, it's not. Actually, like, I can't tell you all the details yet, but the best movie that I saw this weekend was a movie that we'll actually talk about next week. So,
Oh, jeez. Well, I mean, out of the three that we've discussed,
yeah, yeah. Out of the three that we've discussed here tonight, this is probably the best one. I can say that one pretty confidently.
All right. Well, I guess I could watch it some other time if I remember, but I don't know what your plans are for you. I mean, for me, Jacob, I can tell you that I probably will. I know that Asteroid City is going to come to
Hmm.
El Paso, and I've already talked to a friend of mine, and he's eager to go. So I think I'll be able to go see that one. Depends because on Friday night I have a birthday party that I have to go to, and so I'll see what I can. I'll squeeze it in somewhere sometime. But
Yeah, the movie is well. You got two movies to squeeze in this weekend, so.
okay, all right.
So the next week here on the show, episode 43, we got No Hard Feelings, a movie with Jennifer Lawrence, the 2023 sex comedy with Jennifer Lawrence, and then Asteroid City, which is the Wes Anderson film, or the two films that we're covering next week. And then hopefully we should have Rob back next week. He's currently traveling from one side of the country to another, so he'll be out for a couple of days. But I think the hope is that he'll probably be back before we get ready to next week's show.
Yeah, and wishing Rob the very best travels. You know, right now I think last I heard that he was going through Portland, so hopefully he won't get shot on the way. No, he's in Utah. He's actually in Utah, so he should be safe.
Yeah, I know he was in like Idaho the last time I checked his travels, so he's probably somewhere in, there by now. But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean
so
he left Washington, so I mean I think he's out of the rough part of the patch. Until he starts getting closer to Baltimore or whatnot.
well, best of luck to him, and I hope to see him around here soon. So, what's my assignment? That's Asteroid City and No Hard Feelings, correct?
Yep.
All right. Well, I'll see. I'll see. I'm sure No Hard Feelings is playing somewhere around here, but yeah, you sure you don't want me to see Elemental instead?
No. And just for the record, we all skipped Elemental. Not a single person in the country probably saw Elemental this weekend, so there's really no reason of going back and watching that one.
No,
It's another $200 million Disney flop. So that's all you
I
need to know about that movie.
I think you'll be discussing that. I think we'll be discussing that tomorrow. But it's like the lowest Pixar film for the year. I mean, forever in their history, or one of the lowest. So, all right. So I'll put that down for. Hey, look, they're bringing back Minions to Rise of Gru. How exciting! All right, so that's pretty much it. Go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, of course you're gonna go and watch that movie. Yeah, so I want to go ahead and thank our guests for joining us here tonight. Mike, I know he couldn't make it back, but go follow Mexican Ironman on his channel there. He does a lot of work for Midnight Edge and Tom Connor, so go watch him on his stream. Very funny guy, very entertaining guy. And then, of course, Christian Toto, who joined us here for another movie night as well. Go follow. He's pretty much just working everywhere, like nonstop. So I'm glad he got to join us here for a couple of hours to talk about some movies as well. So I guess I should just go ahead and let you guys know what we got coming up. Like I said, next week we're doing No Hard Feelings and Asteroid City. That's what we got coming out next week. Tomorrow night on the Barroom Podcast, episode 53. There's a lot of topics I want to talk about. There's a couple of them I want to really dig deep in. We're going to talk about Warner Brothers. We're going to talk about the massive loss that they had with this Flash movie. And we have to talk about the future of Warner Brothers moving forward, because is this whole thing already over? I know everyone's hoping that James Gunn could turn this thing around. I think this thing is dead. I think they just need to admit that it's dead. Well, we can talk about Disney as well, because Disney is on a massive box office losing streak right now. Another film that's going to lose well over $100 million when it's all said and done from Disney. We'll talk about that in more detail tomorrow. Demi Lovato has apparently given up on being a they them because it was too confusing for her. Even she couldn't keep up with this nonsense anymore. And hey, we're going to talk a little bit about baseball tomorrow too, because apparently all these celebrities are upset that the Oakland A's are moving to Las Vegas. We got to talk about that tomorrow. And then we also have to talk about the fact that a lot of the LGBTQ people are very upset that there's one baseball team out there that refuses to host a Pride Night, and it is the Texas Rangers. And the Texas Rangers have basically told them, get over it, because we're not doing it. So we'll talk about that tomorrow night as well. So that's the Barroom Podcast. And then let you guys know on Friday night as well, we're doing another movie night on Twitch. Well, we should be on Kick as well. So we're going to do Twitch, Kick, and Rumble on Friday night. We're watching the 1977 film Rolling Thunder as well. So that's what we got coming up this week. Rick, what do you got to promote here?
I do have a couple of reviews that are going to be set to publish. One of them is an old style movie, a guy called Joe, with Spencer Tracy and Irene Dunn, which is the original version of a Steven Spielberg movie called Always. I already reviewed Always. Now I wanted to see the original. I also have the review of The Flash coming up. More reviews about various other movies that I have seen but I haven't gotten to yet. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me to plug. Just more reviews, and yeah, I have nothing else.
All right, yeah. So, go and give a shout out to everyone who was listening to us tonight. Like I said, we had Cassie and Zero Dozer on our Kick stream right now. Go follow us over on Kick. I can go ahead and just link to you guys because we're trying to build the Kick stream up. So, follow us there. See more of our stuff exclusive that you can't see here on YouTube over there. Rumble as well. We're closing in on 100 subs on Rumble right now. So, everyone who joined us there. And then talk to the YouTube people. Of course, Mephisto's joining us here tonight, getting ready to sign off. Give a quick little shout out to Dobafet, who was in the chat with us tonight. John, Joe Martinez, Duke Nukem, who joined us here tonight. Gothic Chick. Let me make sure I got everybody else. Spencer, who was definitely here earlier tonight. Rocky the Black Dragon. And I think that was it. I think that's everyone here. So for everyone joining us here tonight, hopefully we gave you a good show. We want to see you guys tomorrow night when we do the Barroom podcast. So until then, we're signing off. Wave to the crowd. Adios. We're out of here.